The morning sun cast long shadows across Oakwood's tree-lined streets as Officer Paul Wilson adjusted his rearview mirror and took another sip of coffee from his travel mug. His partner, Officer Trent Baker, scrolled through messages on the patrol car's computer terminal, occasionally calling out updates from dispatch. "Quiet morning," Wilson remarked, turning onto Maple Avenue where historic homes gave way to newer developments. The patrol car rolled smoothly past joggers and dog walkers enjoying the crisp autumn air. "Too quiet," Baker replied with a half-smile. "Makes me nervous." They'd been partners for nearly 3 years now, long enough to develop the easy rhythm that came with trusting someone to have your back. Wilson was the veteran, 15 years on the force, while Baker had transferred from a neighboring county just a few years back. "Heads up," Wilson said, slowing the patrol car slightly. Black sedan 3 cars ahead. Baker glanced up from the terminal. "What about it?" "Tinted windows look a bit dark. And did you notice that turn back there? Signal came on pretty late." The sedan, a well-maintained but not flashy Audi, maintained perfect speed as it traveled through the upscale neighborhood. Nothing about its movement suggested urgency or evasion, but something about it caught Wilson's attention. "Run the plates," Wilson said. Keeping a consistent distance behind the vehicle, Baker typed the license plate number into the system. "Registered to a Dr. Mitchell. No flags, registration current." Wilson flipped on the patrol lights. "Let's just have a quick chat." Inside the black sedan, Dr. Cassandra Mitchell noticed the flashing lights in her rearview mirror. She took a deep breath, checked her speed exactly at the limit, and signaled as she carefully pulled to the curb. This wasn't her first traffic stop, and at 52 years old, with salt and pepper hair cut in a practical bob, she had learned long ago to keep her reactions measured and movements deliberate. She rolled down her window and placed both hands on the steering wheel, where they would be visible. The morning air carried the scent of someone's freshly cut grass from a nearby lawn. She could hear birds chirping from a maple tree above her parking spot. Officer Wilson approached the driver's side while Baker positioned himself slightly behind the passenger side of her vehicle. "Good morning, ma'am," Wilson said, bending slightly to peer into her window. "License and registration, please." "Good morning, officer," Dr. Mitchell replied with practiced calm. "May I ask why I've been pulled over?" "Your window tint appears to be darker than the legal limit, and you signaled quite late back at that intersection," Wilson replied. His tone wasn't unfriendly, but it carried the automatic authority that came with the uniform. Dr. Mitchell nodded. "I see. My windows are factory standard, but I'll be happy to have them checked. And I apologize about the turn signal. I'm still learning my way around these streets." She reached slowly toward the glove compartment. "I'm going to get my registration now." "Go ahead," Wilson confirmed, watching her movements. Dr. Mitchell's hand didn't tremble as she retrieved her registration and insurance information. 25 years in law enforcement had taught her how traffic stops worked from both sides. Her career had taken her from patrol officer to detective, then through federal training programs and leadership positions in 2 major city departments, before this latest move to Oakwood. She handed over her documents along with her driver's license. "Here you go." Officer Wilson studied her license, glancing between the photo and her face. "You're new to the area, Dr. Mitchell?" "Just moved here last week," she confirmed. "Still unpacking boxes. What brings you to Oakwood?" he asked, the standard small talk that often revealed more than people realized. Dr. Mitchell smiled slightly. "Work. I'm starting a new position on Monday." "What field are you in?" Wilson continued the conversation while Baker remained watchful at his position. "Law enforcement," she answered simply. Wilson's eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, which department?" "I'll be working with the Oakwood Police Department, actually." Wilson nodded, not yet making the connection. "Administrative staff?" "We've been expanding some of our community outreach programs." "Something like that," Dr. Mitchell replied, her tone pleasant but giving nothing away. "Sit tight for a moment." "Dr. Mitchell, I'll be right back." Wilson returned to the patrol car with her documents. In the quiet of her car, Dr. Mitchell watched through her mirrors as the officers conferred. She could have mentioned her position immediately, could have pulled out the official letter of appointment or the badge already issued to her, but years of experience had taught her valuable lessons about observation, about watching systems work when people didn't know they were being evaluated. Inside the patrol car, Officer Wilson ran Dr. Mitchell's license through the system. "Clean record," he noted, not surprised given her demeanor. Not even a parking ticket in the last decade. What's a doctor doing saying she works in law enforcement? Baker wondered aloud. PhD, probably, Wilson replied, still scanning the information. Could be a psychologist for the department or... His voice suddenly trailed off as he clicked on an additional database link. What? Baker asked, noticing his partner's expression change. She's not just working with the department, Wilson said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. According to this, she's the new chief. Baker's eyes widened. The new chief? Our new chief? The one starting Monday? Wilson nodded slowly, scrolling through the information. Dr. Cassandra Mitchell, 25 years in law enforcement, former deputy commissioner in Philadelphia, doctorate in criminal justice, special training with the FBI in community-oriented policing strategies. He looked up at Baker. We just pulled over our new boss. The weight of this realization settled over both officers. The department had been without permanent leadership for nearly 6 months, following the previous chief's retirement. Everyone knew the city council had finally selected someone, but with the official welcome ceremony planned for Monday morning, most officers hadn't yet seen so much as a photograph of their new leader. What do we do? Baker asked, glancing toward the black sedan where Dr. Mitchell waited patiently. Wilson took a deep breath. We finished the traffic stop professionally. He stepped out of the patrol car and walked back to Dr. Mitchell's window, his posture noticeably different. Everything in order, Officer Wilson? Dr. Mitchell asked, having read his name tag during their initial interaction. Yes, ma'am. Everything is perfectly in order, he replied, returning her documents. I see you're going to be joining the department. That's right, she confirmed. As our new chief, he added, his voice betraying a mix of surprise and respect. Dr. Mitchell smiled, neither confirming nor denying his statement. I believe in experiencing a city as an ordinary citizen before stepping into any official role. It provides valuable perspective. Wilson nodded, understanding dawning across his features. Of course. I apologize for the inconvenience of the stop. No apology necessary, officer, Dr. Mitchell replied. You were doing your job. Though I would be interested to know more about what made you notice my vehicle in particular. Wilson hesitated, aware of the weight behind her question. Just routine patrol observation, ma'am. Dr. Mitchell held his gaze for a moment longer than was comfortable, then nodded. I appreciate your attention to detail. I look forward to working with you and Officer Baker starting Monday. Wilson straightened up slightly. We're looking forward to it as well. Chief Mitchell. Until Monday then, she said, her tone making it clear the conversation was concluded. Have a good day, ma'am, Wilson said, stepping back from the vehicle. Dr. Mitchell drove away, watching in her rearview mirror as the two officers stood beside their patrol car, likely processing what had just happened. In the privacy of her car, she finally allowed herself a small smile. Her first interaction with Oakwood's police force had been revealing. Not entirely surprising, she'd experienced similar stops in nearly every city she'd lived in, but educational nonetheless. By Monday morning, everyone in the department would know about this encounter. The story would spread through shift changes and break room conversations. She hadn't planned this particular introduction to her new department, but as she navigated toward the small house she was still in the process of making home, Dr. Mitchell was already thinking about how to use this moment, not as ammunition or embarrassment, but as a foundation for the changes she hoped to implement. Every significant transformation in her career had begun with a moment of unexpected clarity. This traffic stop would become another such moment, not just for her, but for the entire Oakwood Police Department. As she pulled into her driveway, surrounded by half-unpacked moving boxes, Dr. Mitchell made a mental note to begin her tenure not with accusations, but with honest conversation about perception, procedure, and the community they all served. Monday would arrive soon enough, and she would be ready. By Sunday evening, the story had spread through the entire Oakwood Police Department. What began as a hushed conversation between officers Wilson and Baker had transformed into the weekend's hottest topic. Each retelling added new details. Some claimed Wilson had issued a ticket before realizing who she was. Others insisted Dr. Mitchell had flashed her badge immediately. The truth, as always, was less dramatic but far more significant. Officer Wilson sat in the break room, stirring his coffee absently, while ignoring the half-eaten sandwich on his plate. His shift had started an hour ago, and already 3 different colleagues had asked him about the incident. "There you are," said Lieutenant Grace Chen, sliding into the seat across from him. At 48, Chen had seen the department through 2 chiefs and countless policy changes. Nothing much surprised her anymore. "Heard you met the new boss before anyone else," Wilson sighed. "News travels fast. Like wildfire," Chen agreed, unwrapping her own lunch. "So what really happened?" "I've heard at least 4 different versions." "Nothing exciting," Wilson replied. "Routine traffic stop." She was perfectly polite. I ran her information and realized who she was. End of story. Chen studied his face. "Then why do you look like someone stole your dog?" Wilson set down his coffee. "Because I've been thinking about it ever since. About why I pulled her over in the first place. You said it was routine." "That's what I told her," Wilson admitted. "But was it? Nice car, tinted windows, unfamiliar driver in that neighborhood." He trailed off, leaving the implication hanging in the air between them. Chen didn't fill the silence immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was careful. "You think you profiled her?" "I don't know," Wilson said honestly. "Maybe not consciously, but would I have made the same call if the driver had been different? That's what's been eating at me." The conversation paused as Officer Rodriguez entered the break room, grabbing a water bottle from the refrigerator. "Hey, Wilson," Rodriguez called out. "Ready for tomorrow?" "I heard the new chief's bringing the hammer down after what happened." Wilson frowned. "Where'd you hear that?" Rodriguez shrugged. "People talk. Someone said she's planning to use your stop as an example in her first meeting." After Rodriguez left, Chen leaned forward. "Ignore him. Nobody knows what tomorrow will bring." "That's what worries me," Wilson admitted. Dr. Mitchell spent Sunday evening reviewing personnel files. Her small dining table was covered with folders, her laptop open to the department's organizational chart. She'd been preparing for this role for weeks, studying crime statistics, community demographics, and departmental procedures. The traffic stop had provided unexpected insight. She'd watched Officer Wilson's face when realization dawned, the flash of alarm quickly masked by professionalism. She'd noted how his partner had remained at a tactical position throughout. These were trained officers following protocol, and yet something had made them single out her vehicle. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her daughter. "Good luck tomorrow. Mom, show them what real leadership looks like." Dr. Mitchell smiled. At 27, Lily had grown up watching her mother navigate the challenges of law enforcement leadership. She'd witnessed the late nights, the political battles, and the slow, persistent push for change. "Thanks, sweetie," she texted back. "Love you." Returning to her files, Dr. Mitchell pulled out the departmental history. Oakwood PD had been without permanent leadership for nearly 6 months. The interim chief had maintained the status quo, but community complaints had increased by 12% over the previous year. Something needed to change. Her own traffic stop would be the perfect place to start. Monday morning arrived with ceremonial fanfare. The department's largest conference room had been decorated with blue and gold streamers, the city colors. A podium stood at the front, flanked by the American flag and the Oakwood City flag. Coffee and donuts, a cliché Dr. Mitchell found amusing, were arranged on a side table. Officers filed in, dress uniforms pressed, badges shined. Wilson and Baker arrived together, taking seats near the back where they exchanged nervous glances. The mayor stepped to the podium first, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and the confident demeanor of someone in her 3rd term. "Today marks a new chapter for our city's police department," she began, her voice carrying to the back of the room without a microphone. "After an extensive nationwide search, we are proud to welcome Dr. Cassandra Mitchell as Oakwood's new chief of police." Applause filled the room as Dr. Mitchell took her place at the podium. She wore her formal uniform, navy blue with gold accents, 4 stars on each shoulder. Her badge caught the light as she moved. "Thank you, Mayor Reynolds, and thank you to everyone here today," Dr. Mitchell began, her voice steady and clear. "I'm honored to join this department and this community." She paused, making eye contact with various officers throughout the room. When her gaze found Wilson and Baker, she held it for just a moment longer. "I believe in transparent leadership," she continued. "So let me start with something many of you may already know. On Friday morning, I was pulled over by 2 of your colleagues while driving through the Oak Hill neighborhood." A ripple of whispers moved through the room. Wilson felt his face grow warm. Officer Wilson and Officer Baker conducted a professional traffic stop. They were courteous, followed procedure, and ran my information, at which point they discovered they'd pulled over their incoming chief. A few nervous chuckles broke the tension. I could stand here and pretend that was a simple coincidence. But we'd all know better, Dr. Mitchell said, her tone shifting slightly. I drive a nice car with tinted windows. I was new to the neighborhood. And yes, I am a black woman in a predominantly white suburb. The room fell completely silent. Those factors shouldn't determine who gets pulled over, but across this country data tells us they often do, and Oakwood's own statistics suggest similar patterns. She changed slides on the presentation screen, revealing charts of traffic stop demographics compared to city population. The disparities were clear. I'm not here to point fingers or assign blame, Dr. Mitchell continued. I'm here because these are solvable problems. Because good officers, and I believe most of you are good officers, want to serve all community members fairly. Wilson found himself nodding slightly. Starting next week, we'll begin new training on bias-free policing. We'll review stop procedures and implement dashboard cameras for all patrol vehicles. These changes aren't punishments, they're tools to help you do your jobs better and more safely. She turned to a new slide showing community satisfaction, ratings. Public trust is at the heart of effective policing. When people trust us to treat them fairly, they help us solve crimes. They report suspicious activity. They partner with us to make neighborhoods safer. Dr. Mitchell stepped away from the podium, moving to stand directly in front of the assembled officers. I could have introduced myself to Officers Wilson and Baker when they approached my car. I could have pulled out my badge and avoided the stop entirely. But I wanted to experience Oakwood policing the way an ordinary citizen would, because that's who we serve. Ordinary citizens who deserve consistent, fair treatment regardless of what they look like or what car they drive. Officer Wilson felt something shift in his understanding. The anxiety that had knotted his stomach all weekend began to unravel. I'm not here to turn this department upside down, Dr. Mitchell said, her voice warming. I'm here to help us become the best version of ourselves, and that starts with honest conversations about difficult topics. She returned to the podium and smiled. Now I'd like to meet each of you personally. I want to hear your ideas, your concerns, and your hopes for this department. My door will always be open. As the formal ceremony concluded, officers formed a line to greet their new chief. Wilson and Baker hung back, uncertain. Officers, called Lieutenant Chen, beckoning them forward. The chief asked to speak with you specifically. They approached nervously as Dr. Mitchell finished speaking with another group. Officer Wilson, Officer Baker, she said, extending her hand. I want to thank you both. Wilson blinked in surprise. Thank us, Chief? Yes, she said firmly. Your traffic stop gave me valuable insight into our department's current practices, and your professionalism throughout tells me you're the kind of officers who can help lead the changes we need. Baker found his voice. We were just doing our job, Chief. Exactly, Dr. Mitchell replied. And now I'm asking you to do something more. I'd like you both to join the committee that will help develop our new training and procedures. Wilson stood straighter. We'd be honored, Chief. Good, she said with a nod. Because transformation doesn't happen from the top down. It happens when officers on the street commit to doing things differently. As they walked away, Baker whispered to Wilson, Did she just promote us after we pulled her over? Wilson shook his head in amazement. I think she just showed us what real leadership looks like. From across the room, Dr. Mitchell watched the two officers talking. Their stop had been a perfect example of the issues facing the department, unconscious biases influencing everyday decisions. But their reaction today suggested they were open to change. It was a beginning. And in her experience, beginnings were the most important part of any transformation. As the reception continued around her, Dr. Mitchell made mental notes of dynamics between officers, who spoke with confidence and who stayed silent, which veterans welcomed her and which seemed resistant. Every observation would help shape her approach in the coming weeks. The real work was just beginning. But for the first time in months, there was a sense of possibility in the Oakwood Police Department, a feeling that perhaps things really could change for the better. And it had all started with a routine traffic stop that proved to be anything but routine. 3 weeks into Dr. Mitchell's tenure as chief, the Oakwood Police Department hummed with activity. The large conference room that had hosted her welcome Ceremony was now transformed into what officers called the war room, though Dr. Mitchell preferred community improvement center. Walls that once held ceremonial photos now displayed maps marked with color-coded pins, charts tracking various metrics, and community feedback surveys. In the center of the room, a large table hosted the newly formed Procedural Justice Committee, 8 officers of varying ranks, including Wilson and Baker. "Let's review what we've learned so far," Dr. Mitchell said, standing at the head of the table. She'd traded her formal uniform for a more practical daily one, sleeves rolled up as she worked. Lieutenant Chen tapped her tablet screen, bringing up the latest statistics on the main display. "We've analyzed 3 years of traffic stop data. The patterns are pretty clear." The screen showed what many had suspected but few had acknowledged. Black and Hispanic drivers were 3 times more likely to be stopped than white drivers in similar neighborhoods. Once stopped, their vehicles were twice as likely to be searched, despite finding contraband less frequently. "But here's where it gets interesting," Chen continued, swiping to a new chart. "When we break down the data by time of day, the disparities nearly disappear during daylight hours with 2 officers in a car. They're worst at night with single-officer patrols." Officer Wilson leaned forward. In the week since the traffic stop that introduced him to Dr. Mitchell, he'd become one of her most dedicated committee members. "That suggests visual bias rather than intentional targeting." "Exactly," Dr. Mitchell nodded. "When officers can see drivers clearly, the numbers even out. When they can't, other factors influence the decision to pull someone over." Officer Rodriguez, initially skeptical of the committee, pointed to another section of data. "The neighborhood matters too. Stops in areas with more rental properties show higher disparities than established neighborhoods." "Good observation," Dr. Mitchell acknowledged. "That suggests unfamiliarity is being read as suspicion. So what do we do about it?" asked Officer Kelly, one of the department's few female patrol officers. "We can't exactly stop making traffic stops," Dr. Mitchell smiled. "No, but we can change how we decide who to stop." She moved to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. "Let's brainstorm some concrete steps." Across town, community activist Darius Washington stood on the steps of City Hall, addressing a small crowd of residents and local reporters. "For years, we've raised concerns about biased policing in Oakwood," he said, his voice carrying across the plaza. "For years, we've been told there's no problem. But now, finally, someone's listening." At 62, Washington had spent decades fighting for accountability in local government. He'd organized protests, spoken at countless city council meetings, and filed formal complaints that often disappeared into administrative black holes. "Chief Mitchell has agreed to meet with our community council next week," he continued. "She's promised transparency about stop data and real changes to department policies. This isn't just talk. She's already implemented dashboard cameras for all patrol vehicles and started new training programs." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Washington, you've been critical of the police department for years. Do you really believe one new chief can change the culture?" Washington considered the question. "I believe in actions, not promises. And so far, Chief Mitchell's actions match her words. That's more than we've seen before." "What about the rumor that she was pulled over herself?" another reporter called out. Washington smiled. "I don't trade in rumors, but I will say this. Sometimes it takes walking in someone else's shoes to understand their journey. If our new chief has experienced what many community members face daily, that can only help her lead meaningful change." Back at the station, Dr. Mitchell ended the committee meeting and returned to her office, where a stack of paperwork awaited her attention. The transition had been demanding, learning names, reviewing procedures, addressing long-standing issues while handling day-to-day operations. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Officer Baker entered holding a folder. In the weeks since their first encounter, he'd grown more comfortable around the chief, though still maintained a respectful distance. "The body camera proposal you asked for," he said, placing the folder on her desk. "We've researched 5 different systems and included cost comparisons." "Thank you, officer," Dr. Mitchell said, opening the folder. "This looks thorough." Baker hesitated, then spoke again. "There's something else, Chief. Some of us were talking, and we wondered if you might consider a community ride-along program. Citizens could spend a shift with officers, see what we deal with. Might build some understanding." Dr. Mitchell looked up, pleasantly surprised. That's an excellent idea. Would you be willing to help organize it? Yes, ma'am, Baker replied, standing a little straighter. Several of us are interested. Draft a proposal, she said. We'll review it at next week's meeting. After Baker left, Dr. Mitchell sat back in her chair, reflecting on the changes 3 weeks had brought. The initial resistance she'd expected had largely dissolved, replaced by cautious engagement. Not from everyone. A few veteran officers remained standoffish, but enough to build momentum. Her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter. "How's it going with your new team?" Dr. Mitchell smiled as she typed back, "Better than expected. Some good people here who want to do better." "Told you so," came the reply. "When people know better, they do better." Dr. Mitchell set down her phone, her daughter's words echoing Maya Angelou's famous quote. It was the philosophy guiding her approach to leading the department. Not punishment for past mistakes, but education and tools for improvement. The community center was packed for the town hall meeting. Rows of folding chairs quickly filled with residents of all ages and backgrounds. At the front, a simple table held microphones for the panel. Dr. Mitchell, Mayor Reynolds, and Community Council President Darius Washington. The mayor spoke first, welcoming everyone and outlining the evening's purpose: open dialogue between police leadership and the community they served. When Dr. Mitchell approached the microphone, the room quieted. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began. "I believe in transparency, so I want to share something personal with you. On my first week in Oakwood, before officially starting as your chief of police, I was pulled over while driving through Oak Hill neighborhood. Murmurs spread through the audience. The officers were professional and courteous, but that experience reminded me what many community members have reported feeling. The uncertainty, the tension, the questions about why you were singled out." She paused, making eye contact with various audience members. That traffic stop became the catalyst for changes we're implementing in the department. Tonight I want to share those changes with you and, more importantly, hear your experiences and suggestions. For the next hour, residents approached the microphone. Some shared stories of negative encounters with police. Others expressed support for officers they knew personally. A few offered specific ideas for improving community relations. Throughout it all, Dr. Mitchell listened intently, taking notes and responding with respect to each speaker. When difficult questions arose, she didn't deflect or offer empty platitudes. Instead, she acknowledged problems honestly and outlined specific steps toward solutions. Officer Wilson stood at the back of the room, out of uniform but watching carefully. He'd come on his own time, curious about how the community viewed the department. What he witnessed impressed him, not just Dr. Mitchell's poise under pressure, but the genuine dialogue happening between groups that had often been at odds. As the meeting concluded, he watched Dr. Mitchell speaking individually with community members who had lined up to meet her. She gave each person her full attention, listening more than she spoke. He thought back to that fateful traffic stop and how differently it could have gone. If she'd immediately identified herself as the incoming chief, he would have apologized profusely and hurried away embarrassed. There would have been no committee, no data analysis, no honest conversations about bias. Instead, she had used that moment to spark meaningful change. Later that evening, Dr. Mitchell sat on her porch swing, finally taking a moment to herself. The day had been long but productive. The town hall meeting had gone better than expected, with real dialogue emerging even around difficult topics. Her phone rang, the mayor calling. "Cassandra, I just wanted to say you handled that meeting brilliantly," Mayor Reynolds said when she answered. "People are talking about how different it felt from previous town halls." "Different how?" Dr. Mitchell asked. "They felt heard," the mayor replied simply. "Not just placated or managed, but genuinely heard. That's no small thing." After the call, Dr. Mitchell watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. 1 month ago, she'd been packing boxes in Philadelphia, uncertain about the move to a smaller department in a suburban community where she knew no one. Now she was leading a transformation that could become a model for other departments. The challenges ahead remained substantial. Changing policies was far easier than changing hearts and minds. Data analysis and new equipment were just tools. The real work happened in daily interactions between officers and the community they served. But for the first time in years, she felt genuinely hopeful. The traffic stop that could have been just another frustrating experience had instead opened a door to something better. Not just for her, but for an entire community ready for change. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, sitting on her porch as darkness fell, Dr. Mitchell allowed herself to feel the quiet satisfaction of progress. Small steps that, over time, could lead to lasting change. 6 months into Dr. Mitchell's leadership, the Oakwood Police Department had undergone a quiet revolution. The changes weren't flashy or headline-grabbing, but they were substantial, like water gradually reshaping stone. On a bright spring morning, Officer Wilson led a training session for a group of 15 officers. The conference room windows were open, letting in a gentle breeze and the scent of newly bloomed flowers from the small garden outside. "Let's review the traffic stop scenario," Wilson said, clicking to the next slide in his presentation. "What factors should influence your decision to pull over a vehicle?" Officer Rodriguez raised his hand. "Moving violations, equipment failures, suspicious behavior consistent with known crime patterns?" "Good," Wilson nodded. "And what factors should not influence your decision?" "Driver characteristics unrelated to legal violations," Officer Kelly answered promptly. "Race, gender, age, or whether the driver looks like they belong in a neighborhood." "Exactly," Wilson affirmed. He still found it somewhat surreal to be leading these training sessions. 6 months ago, he'd never questioned his own approach to traffic stops. Now he was helping reshape departmental culture. At the back of the room, Dr. Mitchell slipped in quietly, observing without interrupting. These peer-led training sessions had been her idea, but the content and delivery had been developed by the officers themselves. Ownership, she believed, was crucial to lasting change. After the session concluded, officers filed out for their shifts. Wilson gathered his materials as Dr. Mitchell approached. "That was excellent, Officer Wilson," she said, "especially the role-play scenarios." "Thank you, Chief," he replied. "It's getting easier. The first few sessions I felt like a hypocrite teaching about biases I never recognized in myself." Dr. Mitchell smiled. "That's exactly why you're the right person to lead these trainings. Your willingness to examine your own thinking makes your message authentic." Wilson nodded thoughtfully. "The data doesn't lie. When I saw those first reports showing my own stop pattern," he shook his head. "It's hard to argue with numbers. How are the new patrol guidelines working?" Dr. Mitchell asked as they walked toward the door. "Better than expected," Wilson replied. "Having clear objective criteria for stops has actually made the job easier. Officers appreciate the clarity. And complaints are down 30% in just 3 months. And community response to the ride-along program?" Wilson grinned. "We have a waiting list now. Baker's become quite the ambassador. He's got a real talent for helping civilians understand our perspective without dismissing their concerns." Dr. Mitchell nodded, pleased but not surprised. Officer Baker had shown remarkable growth, evolving from quiet skepticism to enthusiastic engagement with community outreach efforts. "I have a meeting with the mayor this afternoon," she said as they reached the hallway. "I'll be sharing our quarterly numbers. Anything I should highlight specifically?" Wilson considered. "The juvenile diversion program is showing promising results. 80% reduction in repeat offenses for participants." "Perfect," Dr. Mitchell said. "Keep up the good work, officer." Across town at City Hall, Mayor Reynolds welcomed Dr. Mitchell into her office with a warm handshake. "Cassandra, always good to see you," the mayor said, gesturing to a chair. "I've been hearing good things about your department lately." "That's why I'm here," Dr. Mitchell replied, opening her tablet to display a series of charts. "Our quarterly data shows significant improvements in several key areas." For the next 20 minutes, she walked the mayor through metrics on response times, crime clearance rates, community satisfaction scores, and officer retention. The numbers told a story of steady improvement. "This is impressive," Mayor Reynolds acknowledged, studying the juvenile diversion program results. "And you've accomplished all this without requesting budget increases." "We reallocated resources more efficiently," Dr. Mitchell explained. "The dashboard cameras actually paid for themselves by reducing frivolous complaints and liability claims." The mayor leaned back in her chair. "I'll be honest, Cassandra. When we hired you, some council members worried you'd be too focused on reform at the expense of public safety. These numbers prove them wrong." Dr. Mitchell smiled diplomatically. "Reform and public safety aren't opposing goals, Mayor. When communities trust police, they report crimes more readily. When officers feel supported and clear about expectations, they perform better. Well, whatever you're doing, it's working, the mayor said, standing to signal the meeting's end. At the door, she added, "By the way, I've been getting calls from other cities asking about your methods. You're becoming something of a regional model." Dr. Mitchell thanked her and left, taking a moment in the hallway to absorb this news. Recognition wasn't her goal, but if Oakwood's success could influence other departments, the impact would multiply exponentially. Evening found Dr. Mitchell in the community center gym, watching teenagers play basketball. The monthly Hoops with Heroes program paired officers with local youth for friendly games, pizza and conversation. Officer Baker dribbled down the court, exaggeratedly struggling to keep the ball away from a lanky 14-year-old who easily stole it and made a layup. Cheers erupted from the sidelines as Baker pretended to collapse in defeat. Dr. Mitchell smiled, remembering Baker's initial reluctance to participate. "I'm terrible at basketball, Chief," he'd protested. She'd responded, "Perfect. This isn't about showing off skills. It's about showing humanity." Now he was one of the program's most dedicated volunteers. She felt a presence beside her and turned to find Darius Washington, the community activist who had once been the department's most vocal critic. "Quite a change from 6 months ago," Washington observed, nodding toward where Officer Rodriguez was demonstrating proper shooting form to a group of younger children. "Progress," Dr. Mitchell agreed. "Not perfection, but progress." Washington watched the games for a moment longer. The neighborhood watch meeting last week had 6 officers attend. Voluntarily, that's never happened before. "They're starting to see community members as partners rather than problems," Dr. Mitchell said. "It takes time, but perspectives are shifting on both sides." "Speaking of time," Washington said, "the city council election is coming up next month. 2 candidates are running on tough-on-crime platforms criticizing your reforms." Dr. Mitchell nodded, unsurprised. "Change always faces resistance. But our data is solid, and the community support is growing. The officers themselves have become our best advocates." As if to illustrate her point, Officer Wilson arrived with a group of neighborhood kids in tow. He'd started a mentoring program, focusing on children who had difficult relationships with law enforcement due to family history or personal experiences. "Dr. Washington," Wilson greeted the activist with genuine respect. "Are you joining the game tonight? We could use another coach." Washington laughed. "Not with my knees, officer, but I'll cheer from the sidelines." Dr. Mitchell watched their easy interaction, remembering how tense their first meeting had been. 6 months ago, they'd eyed each other with suspicion. Now they worked together on the Community Advisory Board, their shared goals overcoming initial mistrust. Later that night in her office, Dr. Mitchell reviewed the latest round of officer evaluations. The department was changing, but not everyone embraced the new direction. A few veterans had transferred out, unable or unwilling to adapt. Their departures had created opportunities for new hires who brought fresh perspectives. A knock at her open door interrupted her thoughts. "Chief? Got a minute?" Lieutenant Chen asked, stepping in with a folder. "Of course, Grace, what's up?" Chen placed the folder on her desk. "The State Police Association Award nominations. The deadline's tomorrow, and we'd like to submit our community engagement program for consideration." Dr. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "That's not usually our department's style. We've never been big on seeking recognition." Chen smiled. "That's just it, Chief. This wasn't my idea." The officers voted to submit the nomination. "They're proud of what we're building here." Dr. Mitchell felt a wave of satisfaction. External validation meant little compared to earning the respect and buy-in of her own officers. "Well then," she said, opening the folder. "Let's make sure we put our best foot forward." After Chen left, Dr. Mitchell stood by her office window, looking out at the parking lot where officers were changing shifts, day personnel heading home, night shift arriving. She watched their interactions, the casual conversations, the shared laughs, the easy camaraderie that extended across demographic lines. The department wasn't perfect. There would always be new challenges, setbacks, and resistance. But watching the officers now, she saw something that hadn't been present 6 months ago, a sense of shared purpose and pride. Her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter. CNN just ran a segment on innovative police departments. Guess who got mentioned? Dr. Mitchell smiled as she typed back. Tell me it wasn't about a certain traffic stop. Actually, it was. They called it the stop that started a transformation. Sending the link now. Dr. Mitchell shook her head, amused that the story had taken on a life of its own. What had felt like an awkward, potentially confrontational moment had evolved into something like a creation myth for the department's transformation. She gathered her things, turning off her office light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, a budget meeting, community feedback sessions, and ongoing training developments. The work was never done, but as she walked through the station, officers nodded respectfully or offered friendly greetings. The building itself felt different, more open, more energetic, more purposeful. 6 months ago, she'd been a stranger pulled over on a suburban street. Now she was leading a department that was gradually becoming a model for others to follow. Small steps, day by day, were adding up to meaningful change. 3 years had passed since that fateful traffic stop on a quiet Oakwood street. What began as an awkward encounter had rippled outward, touching lives throughout the community and beyond in ways no one could have predicted. The Oakwood Police Department headquarters buzzed with activity as final preparations were made for the afternoon ceremony. Officers hung banners while community volunteers arranged chairs in neat rows across the lawn. A small stage had been erected, complete with a podium, and the city and state flags fluttering gently in the autumn breeze. In her office, Dr. Mitchell put the finishing touches on her speech. 3 years as Oakwood's chief of police had been challenging, rewarding, and transformative, not just for the department but for her personally. A knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Captain Wilson entered, his new rank insignia still looking slightly unfamiliar on his uniform. His promotion 6 months earlier had been met with universal approval from officers and community members alike. "Everything's ready outside, Chief," he reported. "The governor's car just pulled into the parking lot and the mayor is greeting her now." Dr. Mitchell nodded, closing her laptop. "And our special guests?" "All here," Wilson confirmed with a smile. "The students from Central High are pretty excited to present their project." "As they should be," Dr. Mitchell replied, standing and straightening her formal uniform. Their research was instrumental in designing the statewide program. Together, they walked through the building toward the main entrance. Officers and staff they passed offered smiles, nods, or brief congratulations. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of pride and accomplishment. "Nervous?" Wilson asked as they approached the doors. Dr. Mitchell smiled. "About the ceremony?" "No, about what comes next." "A little. You'll do great," Wilson assured her. "The state program is based on everything you built here. Who better to lead it?" Before she could respond, they emerged into the bright sunshine where hundreds of people had gathered for the ceremony. The crowd was a cross-section of Oakwood, officers in uniform, families with children, community leaders, business owners, and teenagers from local schools. Dr. Mitchell took her place on stage alongside the mayor, the governor, and other dignitaries. From this vantage point, she could see faces that told the story of the past 3 years. Lieutenant Chen, now poised to become Oakwood's interim chief. Officer Baker, whose community outreach programs had become a cornerstone of the department's approach. Darius Washington, once a critic and now a trusted partner in community initiatives. The mayor approached the microphone first, welcoming everyone to what she called a bittersweet celebration. "Today we gather to celebrate the extraordinary achievements of our police department under Chief Mitchell's leadership," she began. "Crime is down 28%. Community satisfaction is at an all-time high. Our officer retention rate leads the state. The Oakwood model of policing is being studied and adapted by departments across the country." She paused, looking toward Dr. Mitchell. "But today's bittersweet because we're also saying goodbye to the remarkable leader who made this transformation possible. Chief Mitchell has been appointed by the governor to lead our state's new police reform and community engagement division, where she'll help other communities achieve what we've accomplished here in Oakwood." Applause swept through the crowd. Dr. Mitchell felt a surge of emotion as she surveyed the gathering so different from the tense, divided community meetings of 3 years ago. The ceremony continued with various speakers highlighting different aspects of the department's transformation. Captain Wilson spoke about changes in training and accountability. A community college professor presented data showing dramatic improvements in police-community relations, Students from Central High School demonstrated their award-winning app that facilitated communication between officers and teenagers. Finally, it was Dr. Mitchell's turn to speak. As she approached the podium, her thoughts briefly returned to that morning 3 years ago when Officers Wilson and Baker had pulled her over. How differently things might have unfolded if she had immediately identified herself, or if they had responded defensively to her later questions about the stop. "Thank you all for being here today," she began. "When I came to Oakwood 3 years ago, I didn't arrive with a master plan or a revolutionary vision. I came with questions, a willingness to listen, and a belief that positive change is always possible." She glanced toward Captain Wilson and Lieutenant Baker in the front row. "My very first experience with Oakwood police officers happened before I officially started the job. When I was pulled over on Oak Hill Drive, a ripple of knowing laughter moved through the crowd. The story had become something of a local legend. That traffic stop could have been just an awkward moment, quickly forgotten. Instead, it became the catalyst for honest conversations about bias, training, and community expectations. It became the foundation for everything we've built together." Dr. Mitchell stepped away from the podium, choosing to speak more directly to the gathered community. "I want to be clear about something. The transformation of this department wasn't my achievement. It was our achievement. Every officer who embraced new training, every community member who participated in ride-alongs or advisory boards, every young person who joined mentoring programs, you all created this change." She gestured toward the high school students who had presented earlier. "The next generation is already taking our work further than we imagined. These students didn't just identify problems, they created solutions. Their perspective wasn't limited by how things have always been done. They saw possibilities where others saw obstacles." Returning to the podium, Dr. Mitchell continued, "In my new role, I'll be helping other communities build their own versions of what we've created here. Not by imposing our exact model, every community has unique needs and challenges, but by applying the principles that worked for us: transparency, accountability, and genuine partnership between police and the people they serve." She looked toward Lieutenant Chen. "I leave knowing that Oakwood's progress will continue under outstanding new leadership. The foundations we've built together are strong." As she concluded her speech, Dr. Mitchell felt a sense of completion. The work was far from finished. True transformation was an ongoing process. But Oakwood had turned an important corner. What began as a traffic stop had evolved into something remarkable. After the ceremony, as people mingled on the lawn enjoying refreshments, Dr. Mitchell found herself speaking with Officer Rodriguez, who had been among the initial skeptics of her approach. "I didn't believe it would work," he admitted candidly. "I thought all the talk about bias and community engagement was just political correctness that would make our jobs harder." "And now?" Dr. Mitchell asked. Rodriguez smiled. "Now I can't imagine policing any other way. My job is easier when the community trusts us, and I sleep better at night knowing I'm part of building something good." Later, as the crowd thinned, Captain Wilson approached with a small wrapped package. "From all of us," he said, handing it to her, "a little reminder of where it all started." Dr. Mitchell unwrapped it to find a framed photograph of Oakwood's main street, with a small model police car and an elegant plaque that read, "Sometimes being pulled over is just the beginning of the journey." "Thank you for taking us along," she laughed, genuinely touched by the gesture. "I'll keep this on my desk at the new office." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the lawn, Dr. Mitchell took a final walk around the department building. Each room held memories of challenges overcome and progress made. The war room still called that despite her objections, where they had analyzed data and developed new approaches. The training facility where officers now practiced de-escalation techniques and community engagement strategies. The break room where barriers between ranks and backgrounds had gradually dissolved through countless conversations. Outside, she paused by the community garden planted by officers and neighborhood children 2 years earlier. Now flourishing with flowers and vegetables, it had become a symbol of their collaborative approach. Captain Wilson joined her there. "Ready for the next chapter?" Dr. Mitchell nodded. "Ready, but I'll miss this place." "You're only going across town to the state offices," he reminded her with a smile. "And we'll be working together on the statewide implementation." "True," she acknowledged. It's not an ending, just an expansion. As they walked toward the parking lot where her car waited, Dr. Mitchell reflected on the journey of the past 3 years. From outsider to leader, from a moment of tension to a movement of transformation, the traffic stop that might have been just another statistic had instead become the beginning of something remarkable. And the journey was far from over. "You know," Wilson said as they reached her car, "Baker and I still debate which one of us made the decision to pull you over that day." Dr. Mitchell laughed. "Does it matter?" Wilson shook his head. "I guess not. What matters is what happened next." "Exactly," she agreed, opening her car door. "It's never about how the story begins. It's about how we choose to write the next chapter." As she drove away from the department that had been her home for 3 years, Dr. Mitchell felt not sadness, but anticipation. The work ahead would be challenging. Changing entire systems always was. But Oakwood had proven that meaningful transformation was possible. One traffic stop, one conversation, one policy change at a time. Sometimes the most significant journeys begin with an unexpected detour.